Hello, Tony, Mary, Nicole, Jill, Mawish, Mildred, Liz, Gina, Atasha, Brandy, Nancy, Chloe, Elizabeth, Lauren, Nicole, and Heather. Welcome to the second half of Ethical Leadership. Hard to believe we're already done with half of the course, but as you all know, these 6-week courses move right along. Thanks for another great week of discussion, and I really am going to work extra hard to make this one short. Just a few comments about the material for this week. Some great discussion in the forum about is it necessary to lose sometimes? Are there times where you have to tell the truth even if it's going to have consequences that are not good, or consequences that you feel would be even hurtful or harmful to people, and in this case, people that are in some pretty serious need, people who are struggling with homelessness. So a lot of you basically said that you would try to address the problem in other ways first, and I think that's really just common sense. That the first thing that we're going to try to do is see, are there other ways that we can secure the funding rather than lying on the report, rather than fudging the numbers. Most of you were pretty clear that fudging the numbers was not an option, and a variety of reasons there. Some of you relied on a deontological ethics point of view. Some of you talked about virtue ethics. Some of you talked about conscience, and I think that was a helpful sub-discussion. Lauren and Liz talked about not going against your conscience, not going against your gut feeling about what is right. And Heather talked about this too, about if you go against your own conscience to be honest, that in one situation that can have implications in other aspects of your life too, that it is, for lack of a better phrase, it can be a slippery slope. I think that's an important insight. This goes back to the Christensen video at the beginning of the course, where he talks about focusing on always doing the right thing, and no matter what the situation is. And in a way, that makes things a little bit easier. If you have what Aristotle would call the habit of virtue, if you have a habit of basically, I tell the truth, that's what I do, it becomes a lot easier to consistently tell the truth if that's just who you are, if that's just the way that you do things. You don't have to think about it too much, and I think that that's the way we operate most of the time in life. However, we do have situations where we have the opportunity to think about an ethical dilemma, and we should think about an ethical dilemma. And those are the cases where I think some of the theories that we've covered in the class can be helpful. Several of you talked about deontological ethics, the idea that there are certain moral rules that are always in place and that we should always follow. And if you're operating from that point of view, when you come up against an ethical dilemma, you might have two conflicting values, so you still have to sort things out. So, for example, one of the examples that I put in the discussion forum, if you're in Nazi Germany and the Gestapo knocks at your door and says, "Are there any Jews here?" and you have Jews hiding in your basement, do you tell the truth? I would guess that most of us would lie in that circumstance. Even those of us that are kind of strict deontological ethicist kind of people that would say that it's almost never, or would even say it's never good to lie, we would say in that case, well, to save lives from evil people, let's lie. Immanuel Kant, the sort of founder of deontological ethics, Kant would say, no, even in that situation, you should not lie. That there is no situation in which it is justifiable to lie. And his argument for that is basically, we can control our own actions. We can control the way we act and what we say, but we cannot control outside circumstances. So there's no way for us to know what the effect would be of our lie in any given situation. The only thing that we can control is whether or not we tell the truth. And so Kant would say, you can't lie based on your own forecast of bad results from telling the truth. Kant would say, your choice is simply to tell the truth or not, to obey the moral law or not. Then it's up to other people to either obey the moral law or not. But those are circumstances that you don't have control over. Food for thought. We talked a little bit about utilitarianism too in this discussion forum. And according to a utilitarian framework, some people might argue that, well, fudging the numbers is a lot less harm to people than letting homeless people go without services, so that it might be acceptable to fudge the numbers in this circumstance. However, as a utilitarian, you could also kind of take the long view in terms of, well, what would happen over the long term if we fudge the numbers? Would it have even more negative results for the organization? Would it have negative results for the whole nonprofit community if people came to not trust nonprofits to spend their money responsibly? Would donations go down? Would government grants get cut back even more? So even from a utilitarian perspective, it's not a clear cut, yes, just tell a lie, fudge the data, get the extra funding. So organizations and ethics, the second forum. Just a couple of points here. You all recognize that there are some things about a code of ethics that are pretty much universal, that ideas, values like honesty, integrity, those things are whether you're a government agency, a nonprofit, or in a for-profit business, those things are all core. And I would argue that they are really fundamental. And instilling those kinds of virtues in an organizational culture is, in my mind, what makes more of a difference in the long term. You might have the best code of ethics, you might have all the situations covered, you might have different scenarios where you clearly explain to all your employees what is proper, what is improper, what is ethical, what's unethical. And yet, if there is not a culture of honesty, people will somehow find a way to get around the rules. That's just the way we human beings tend to be. So I think it is important to have those details, that in specific industries, it's important to make it clear what the ethical obligations are. For example, if you're in a for-profit business that has proprietary business information, clearly sharing that business information with somebody outside the business would be unethical. However, if you're in a nonprofit that's trying to get some work done in the community and you have an effective way of doing it, and there's another nonprofit that's trying to do the same work, it may well be fine to share your insights and your processes with the other nonprofit, because you're kind of both on the same side trying to do the same work, and there wouldn't be anything unethical about sharing what your nonprofit came up with to more effectively do the work. So I really am going to make it quick this time, and we're going to cut it off before the 9-minute mark. If you have any questions, if you want to have any further discussion, if there's anything that I can do to be helpful to you, please reach out to me, and I look forward to reading your papers on the Code of Ethics. Thanks.